So today on the podcast, we wanted to talk about that when you just want to give your kids something rather than them having nothing. And we kind of want to acknowledge that when you're stressed out and overwhelmed, this is really normal, that you just want them to eat. But that over time, this isn't a great pattern to get into. We also, I guess, want to acknowledge that, like, I think of myself when my kids were younger, and that it can be scary when your kid doesn't eat something. You know, you can get worried about them losing weight or them not developing or them becoming unwell. But do you think it's okay for them to miss a meal rather than you just giving them something, anything to kind of...
Yeah. Look, I think, giving them something rather than that kind of something is better than nothing approach is a reasonable short-term solution to ensure that a kid is actually going to eat something.
Yeah.
But it can have long-term consequences for their eating habits. I personally think it's fine for them to miss the odd meal. I think it may even support them to develop a healthy appetite for the next meal.
Yeah.
I can remember when my daughter was young and I was back at work in clinical practice. So, it was pretty intense having a patient sitting in front of you, wanting your help. And the last thing I wanted to do was to go into work feeling tired.
Yes.
And I can remember Saoirse pushing back, not wanting to eat dinner, and me panicking that I told myself this story. If she didn't eat, then she would wake up in the night and, hungry, and then my sleep would be disturbed, and then I'd head into work feeling a bit fractured and scattered from not having a good night's sleep. Then I wouldn't be serving my patients as well as I should be.
Yeah.
So I told myself this story, and, it was really tempting to come up and give her something that she might have been asking for. But I soon learned that when she went to bed and she, didn't eat a proper meal or didn't eat at all, she never woke up and she was completely fine.
Yeah.
And I understand, that she has had no health conditions. We're talking just in general here. We're not talking about a child that has any particular health conditions or is unwell or something like that. But she did definitely go through a phase, around the age of around 3, where she was really pushing back at dinner time and not wanting to eat. I can even remember taking a banana to bed with me in case she did wake up in the night, that I actually had something that I could give her that, was easy. I didn't have to go into the kitchen and prepare or something like that.
Yeah.
But, I found that it was just a case that she was just tired. She was just going through a picky eating phase.
Yeah.
And she definitely learned, I definitely learned that if she didn't want to eat dinner, and even if she was asking for something that, I didn't want her to necessarily be eating, and I didn't cave to that she was fine. She was fine. So I don't... I've never personally had a problem with my kids missing meals. I've always honoured that and held firm boundaries around that. But I think, it's probably important that we dive into the problems that are associated with this something is better than nothing approach, because I know, like, as I said, it does produce short-term results, but it isn't ideal in the long run, really, for a number of reasons.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main ones is that it kind of can set your kid up to be more of a picky eater.
Yeah. It definitely reinforces that behaviour.
Yeah. Like, and it can set up power struggles, them learning that even though mum's created or dad's created this dinner, I can just say no and ask for a chocolate bar and I'll get that.
Yes.
And that's not serving them or you on many levels, nutritionally, but even mentally and emotionally.
Yes.
Like, we need to parent and we know what's best for their health. And, like we've spoken about in other podcasts, when they're out of that window of tolerance or they're just not regulated, they are going to push back, and we'll help them become more regulated by just setting that boundary of, no, we eat, this is the food we're eating now, and if you don't want to eat it, that's okay. but I'm not getting you a chocolate bar.
Yep.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
the other thing that's kind of important is that when we do kind of give in and just give them something rather than nothing, it kind of throws out the routine for meal times, and that we need to remember kids really thrive on consistency and regularity. Yeah, and boundaries. Like boundaries are the most important thing in making a child feel loved and safe.
Yes.
And so setting that boundary of, no, this is what we're eating. And I would say it exactly with this tone, like, this is what we're eating. I can hear that you don't like it. I just want you to try a little bit. And it's okay if you don't eat much. You're not getting the chocolate bar.
Yeah.
And just, even if you need to say that 3 times with that same tone.
Yeah.
I hear you. I think you're tired. Not giving you the chocolate bar.
Yes. This is dinner.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. No emotion. Yeah. Just this is
no bribing, no
matter
coercing.
Of fact, this is the boundary.
Yeah. I think if you don't reinforce boundaries, it just creates, I mean, look, it's hard, isn't it? Because the boundaries don't feel comfortable.
No,
but
it's so hard.
Mealtime stress is a real thing.
Yes.
And I know a lot of parents feel a lot of stress.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you're firm in your boundaries, you know what your boundaries are, then that in itself, in the short term, might not be the solution to the immediate problem, but in the long term, you're going to get the result that you're after, and that meal times aren't going to be stressful.
Totally.
And they're going to be more enjoyable for everyone involved, right?
It's that short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah.
And it's really remembering that as a parent. I used to lose perspective and get really lost in the moment and feel totally overwhelmed and question my boundary setting and have all this stuff going in my head and be over concerned about their emotions.
Yes.
And it's really important to remember this is one day of me setting a firm boundary. I'm not hurting them.
Yeah.
I'm just setting a limit.
Yes.
And I'm supporting them to feel where my limit is, which is so important for a kid to feel.
Yes.
And for me to remember, like, over the years, it was a few days of that.
Yes.
Like, it's not years of that. It's years of that if you don't put the boundaries in place.
If you have wishy-washy boundaries.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I suppose the other issue with that something is better than nothing approach from my perspective is that if you is that just limited exposure, I suppose, to new food, which is just so important for kids, for their from a nutritional perspective, but also just from the perspective of just nipping picky eating in the bud, really.
Yeah.
If parents continually provide the same limited range of foods that their child prefers, it just reduces that opportunity for exposure to new tastes and textures and nutrients, let alone if that something is already nutritionally devoid, which is common. Often you're not replacing a really nourishing meal with another really nourishing meal.
No.
Usually the something is something that's not nourishing. Yeah. So
I remember when my daughter was little and she got influenza A. Yeah. It was really pretty scary.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of bone broth and quinoa in the bone broth. But she started always asking for chamomile tea with milk in it.
Yeah.
And I think because I was worried about her eating something and we got into this pattern of something's better than nothing.
Yes.
And she would fill up on the milky chamomile tea and not eat anything else.
Yes.
And I think she did become nutritionally deficient.
Yes.
Yeah, because everything started to reduce. And so we had to build more food into her diet.
It's a great point, actually. I know when I was in clinical practice and I was dealing with picky eating behaviours, with kids who were generally already sick, because that's why they'd come to see me as a naturopath.
Yeah.
And, I was trying to pinpoint when their health kind of went downhill and when their picky eating behaviours really kicked off. And almost always it was after a severe illness, funnily enough.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Almost always.
Yep.
And it was because of this. It was because their parent, exactly what you've just explained, that the child, like wasn't well. So the parents were overly concerned about them eating and drinking. And it was like, okay, well, let's just find something that the child will want to eat or drink. And I think that is important to a degree. I'm very much led by what my kids feel like if they are unwell.
Yeah.
But not to the point of them saying, well, I feel like ice cream every day for dinner.
Yes.
Because that's not serving them nutritionally.
Yeah.
So, it's fine if I say to them, do you feel like bone broth, or do you feel like, a soup, or, do you feel like just some toast or something, like what do you feel like? And they pick something that's reasonably healthy or something that I consider nourishing.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
But as I said, usually there's something. And it's sad, isn't it? Because I know for kids who are seriously sick and they end up in hospital, unfortunately, the foods that they're fed when they come out of anaesthetic, it's things like ice cream and ice blocks and apple juices, jellies. It's jellies. It's things that actually don't support their healing or their nourishment, and definitely set up poor eating behaviours as well, because we're going to go into more detail about when kids slip into that primitive part of their brain where they're being driven to seek out nutritionally void foods. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent. Definitely, from my perspective as well, nutritional deficiencies are way up there with that something is better than nothing, with the concerns I have with something is better than nothing. Children who consistently refuse nutritious foods in favour of less healthy options often don't end up meeting their, dietary needs for essential vitamins and minerals and amino acids. So, over time, this leads to nutritional deficiencies, and then their health can spiral as a result.
And some of those nutritional deficiencies can reduce their appetite,
100%,
and their want for a variety
their
of food.
actual,
so it's
their
like
desire. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah,
definitely a vicious circle. They often will become zinc and iron deficient, and zinc plays a really important role in their desire and them having an appetite for healthier foods. So, it very, very much is it is a catch-22 situation. And, these substituting for not so healthy options, it really sets a precedent for unhealthy eating habits that can persist right through into adulthood. As parents, I feel like it's one of our most important roles is to support our children to learn how to love eating healthy whole foods.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
And I think overall, while it's important to kind of make sure our kids are getting enough to eat, it is really important for us to kind of foster positive eating habits and a diverse palate, like you say. And for me, this kind of relates to, it's not just about food. When we support kids to explore diverse foods, I think it creates confidence for stepping out and exploring diversity of just in life. It encourages, I think, a balanced approach that kind of includes exposure to foods and just different things that, because our brains and kids, you see this when they can kind of, that picky eating comes in and then they're picky about where they go, it just limits.
It can cascade into other areas, can't it? It doesn't always.
No,
but it is definitely.
I think it can create this way of thinking and being in the world that doesn't support your kid to have a full life.
Broad.
I think that,
perspective, on life, And I mean, look, it's hard, isn't it, when we're discussing this one very limited subject. Picky eating behaviours, we understand they're complex.
Definitely.
And as such, they definitely require very much a multifaceted and supported solutions, which is, why we put our Well Nourished Kids program together, isn't it? Because we wanted a kind of one-stop shop, I suppose, for finding solutions and working through picky eating behaviours and covering all of your bases, because there are so many different solutions that you can chip away at.
I guess for both of us, what's really important is that, because this is a tiny podcast, like 15 minutes, And when you have a child with that is going through that picky eating stage, it can be really stressful. And you can blame yourself and you can blame your child. And we really don't want you to feel that that's what we're saying.
No.
We more want to try to give you some support and try to kind of validate your efforts, validate your child. And in our program, we try to give ideas, things for you to try, things for your child to try. And I guess why I'm so passionate is because I really feel it's so important. You know, a nutritious, well-balanced diet is so important for every part of our well-being, every part of our life as a human, you know.
As our boundaries and as our, you know, we often talk about relationships
skills,
and that sort of thing. We often talk about, is it the chicken or the egg?
Yes.
You know, when... you know, Jane works with particularly a lot of children from troubled backgrounds and that are struggling in life, aren't they? And, you know, they don't necessarily have great diets, but then there's also other things at play. So,
multifaceted.
So multifaceted. So that's why I suppose we're in partnership here. You know, I bring the nutrition and the kind of food support, and you help us understand the behavioural reasons as to why these issues kind of develop. So anyway, hopefully you've got some ideas from that little short discussion. And we'll be back with lots more goodness.
Yes, thank you.